Hello there, welcome to the Saroy channel. I'm so glad you've joined me this evening. It's a beautiful evening for a lovely story that you wanted to hear, and it's all about a long distance truck driver. And I just love these stories because I really do feel that these long haul truck drivers really get to see some spectacular things on the road, and I'm sure they've got us some stories to tell us. So let's get started. I know you're going to enjoy this. Hello there. I'm eager to share with you and your listeners the 3 encounters I had with different Sasquatch. I'm a coast-to-coast long-haul truck driver, delivering packages and freights to all parts of North America and Canada. These days, I drive a bright red Swift V&L 760. I'm self-employed, so the truck I use is my own, and I like it this way because it means I can pick and choose which delivery contracts I want to take on. Believe me, they are not always dictated to by money. You see, for me, if a delivery is going to require a pretty humdrum, dull scenic route, I would never take it over a trip that would be scenic and beautiful, because those kinds of landscapes really do lift your mood and elevate the quality of your life. And as trucking is my life, I needed to make it mean something. Being a long-distance lorry driver is not a job for everyone. It means being separated from your loved ones for days at a stretch. This causes for many blokes the inevitable breakdown of their marriages. I'm one of the lucky ones, as I have an independent, understanding wife called Ruth. There are moments on the road that can seem incredibly monotonous and boring. I'm very lucky to have a travelling companion called Suki, who is a black cat with a distinctive white moustache that makes him look like a real gentleman. Suki came into my life from one of my truck driving expeditions. I saw her lying half dead on the side of the road, and I rescued her. The rest is history. I want to tell you that that cat loves the open road, and she will park herself on my dashboard and watch the world go by as we travel far and wide. The other negatives about truck driving are the waiting at checkpoints, and some of those truck stops are far from exciting, and the food, well, let's not talk about that. It can be monotonous to the extreme. So a trip to the Walmart is a welcome change, let me tell you. Let's get real here. Driving a truck can be very lonely, and I've seen people not make it in this business because of the isolation the job entails. You also need a good attention span and plenty of patience. Then there's, of course, a certain amount of skill and mechanical knowledge needed to drive a truck weighing 26,000 pounds in hazardous conditions like snowstorms in Toronto or heavy rain and wind somewhere else. Anyway, back to the main topic of this letter, which of course is the hairy man known as Bigfoot. Let me tell you, he really does exist, because I have seen 3 different Sasquatches over the years in different locations. That is the one great advantage of being a truck driver, because you name it, I've seen my share of drama on the roads. Also beautiful scenery, wildlife, and so much more. I have even had a supernatural experience once, but that is another story, and I do not wish to go into that now, maybe another time. My first Sasquatch sighting happened in Vermont very early in the morning. The weather was exceedingly cold, and the sun was beginning to rise, so light was dawning. I remember at first thinking that someone was out very early in the morning and were dressed very warmly. As I got closer, I realized that the creature was way too large to be a human, and its gait was not like that of a bear. It had a primate look to it, but it all happened so fast in seconds, so it's hard to divulge too many details. This creature crossed the road in 3 steps, and that is humanly impossible. And then it scaled a 6-foot barrier with the agility of a mountain goat. Never seen anything like it. I was so impressed. The next time I saw a Sasquatch was in Georgia, of all places. This one was covered with white hair, which is more unusual. It happened in the early hours of the morning when it was pouring with rain. It was strange. This creature was squatting on the ground and scratching around in the mud for something. Maybe he was digging for roots, who knows. He had all the classic features of a Sasquatch, which included a cone-like head on humongous shoulders with a massive body that was easily over 800 pounds. His head kind of had a little sort of Down syndrome kind of look about it. Anyway, as it was early and still slightly dark while very wet, I did see a little eye shine in the creature's eyes, like an orange-red sort of colour. On that occasion the road was very quiet, not a vehicle in sight, and when the Sasquatch heard my truck, it looked at it for a second as if studying it curiously, and then fled like greased lightning to the surrounding woodland. I have heard since that the red color of my truck may have created interest on the creature's part, as red is not usually seen in its own natural habitat. A good theory, I suppose. Anyway, my third encounter happened down the back roads of Big Sky, Montana. See, I told you I like the scenic routes, and it was a beautiful drive, let's not kid. The time was early in the morning, although I cannot remember exactly when, possibly about 7:30 or 8. The road I was on was pretty much empty, so to speak, no traffic in sight for miles. I had been experiencing the horrible throbbing of a migraine headache and the familiar biliousness that often follows. The previous night truck stop, I had been given a free meal voucher because I had filled up with 150 gallons of petrol. I had chosen some smoked shredded pork, baked beans and chips, but for some reason that meal did not agree with me, and all morning my stomach had been flinching, and I could even taste the smell of last night's dinner in my mouth. Suddenly a wave of nausea came over me so strongly, and my stomach literally retched. I knew I had to spew my guts out, and there were only seconds to do so. I was out of my truck within seconds on the side of the road, hurling all of last night's dinner all over the place. I stood there with my head leaning towards the ground, just throwing up and sweating like a pig. After a while, the relief I felt after vomiting was huge, and I could even feel the migraine headache slipping away. I looked around to survey my environment. I was parked on a clearing surrounded by red cedar trees that were rarely hugely tall and could have been 1,000 years old. That's how impressive they were. The woodland area was very pretty, but there was no early morning bird song, which surprised me. For a moment I felt as if I was not alone, and if somebody was watching me. But who? I looked around, but could see nothing. I did smell the most odorous smell that you could ever imagine, and I suddenly thought with horror that it must have been the smell from my vomit. Never before had my vomit smelt quite so putrid, I thought. I made a mental note never ever to return to that smokery. I sat silently for a moment, enjoying the stillness of my environment. I still felt a little dodgy, and I thought it would be advisable to keep driving after my vomiting episode. I thought it would be advisable not to keep driving after my vomiting episode. So I decided to lie down in my comfortable bed behind the driver's seat area that is very spacious and very cozy. Sooty, my cat, was behaving strangely, but I didn't care because I just wanted a quick kip. She started to meow in a very agitated fashion, and her tail was thrashing around as if she wasn't happy about something. A little while later, I was awoken by the thrashing sound on my truck. It sounded like someone had taken a tree branch with leaves on it and was banging it against my pristine vehicle. Damn, I said to myself, rising from my bed towards the truck door on the driver's side. I was expecting to see an angry local giving me a piece of his mind for parking on illegal land. As I got to the door, I saw a face smudged against the window. Now bear in mind you need to be at least 10 foot tall to be looking through my truck window, because it's high off the ground, as you can imagine. What the heck is that, I thought. The face being smudged against the window kind of distorted it, if you know what I mean. Then I saw the eyes that were fixed on me with an expression of such rage, such as I've never seen before or since on any creature. To say I was well and truly terrified is an understatement. I have travelled in life-threatening, perilous conditions that have had every bone in my being shaking with fear. But this was 1,000 times worse. My heart was throbbing so loudly I could feel the vibration and hear each beat. The creature started pounding on my door again, and then he let out a huge scream that was almost supernatural. It was so terrifying, like someone being murdered. I was shaking in my boots. Not that I was wearing any. For a moment I just froze, wondering what the hell I was going to do. It reminds me of the time that Sooty, my cat, caught a mouse, and the little thing was so terrified. I remember it stood right next to Sooty while he ate some dry biscuits, and then he turned to the mouse and bit into the mouse and ate half of it and then finished the whole thing, as if it was nothing. OMG, I was now the prey, and this creature was going to take me down, and there was nothing I could do about it. Suddenly that survivor instinct took over my whole body, and before I knew it I was in the truck seat, pressing down my accelerator so fast and racing away from the scene. I could see the creature throwing some liquidy-like spray at my car that looked like milky porridge. I got a clearer look at him in the rear mirror as I watched him shaking a tree branch at me angrily, which he held in his enormous arms that literally rippled with muscles. His arms fell way past his knees, and his legs were as thick and solid and giant, like giant tree trunks. He was covered with a reddish tawn colour hair, and he had a primate look to him. I would say this creature was 1,000 pounds or more. He was the biggest Sasquatch I have ever encountered, and his cone-like head did not have the Down syndrome look of the previous Sasquatch that I saw in Georgia. I was later to find that it was my vomit he had thrown at my car, and the odour was not like what I had smelt at the clearing. So I think the smell came from the animal, because he looked like he could do with a good old bath. Never seen a bar of soap a day in his life, you mark my words. Looking back, I wonder if my vomit made him mad, not in the way that it might make us mad if someone had soiled an area. I think maybe he thought I was trying to lay claim to his territory, much like a lion that sprays urine to mark an area representing his territory. That animals are not to approach. Just a thought. Anyway, I'm still doing my driving on the open roads, and if I have any more Sasquatch encounters in the future, rest assured you'll be hearing from me and Sooty again. By the way, Sooty sends you and your listeners a big and lovely purr. Many thanks to you. From Tom. Please do not let anyone know my details. Many thanks. Thank you, Tom, for a wonderful story. Until next time, good night.